History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to this 565th episode of the History Goes Bump podcast. Ghost Tours for the Theater of the Mind. I'm your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this episode, we are kind of doing a redux and some fresh stuff. We had done the Island Hotel and Restaurant back in 2015, and I'd been kind of setting it aside, doing it as a redux, because I'd wanted to actually go stay there, and we actually got that opportunity a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, we did.
Did a little investigating. Had another one of our profound experiences that we've never had at any other location before. So we're looking forward to sharing that with everybody. We're also going to talk about a couple of the other haunts that are on Cedar Key, which was completely devastated by Hurricane Helene that just whipped through there a couple months ago. Before we get into sharing all of that, we want to welcome into the spooktacular crew, Becky and Christos.
Thank you so much for joining our Facebook group.
And now this moment in Oddity.
The moment in Oddity was suggested by somebody in the crew. I just don't recall who, so my apologies. Throughout history, many methods of food and drink preservation have been discovered. Prior to the invention of modern refrigerators, preserving things like milk proved to be challenging. However, centuries before modern refrigeration, the people of Russia and Finland discovered a strange method for keeping milk fresh and free from bacteria. It just so happens that the body secretions of their common frogs have many antibacterial properties. Although the idea of preserving milk with frogs was considered folklore, scientists in Moscow announced this discovery back in 2012. Apparently, Russian brown frog's skin secretes peptides that have antimicrobial compounds that help reduce the growth of fungi and bacteria. The scientists even discovered that the slime of these amphibians can be as effective as certain pharmaceuticals against bacteria like Salmonella and Staphylococcus. Now, we don't recommend grabbing some random frog and popping it into your milk to help it last longer, nor do we recommend licking one because you're worried about a possible bacterial infection.
You might get a little loopy and have all kinds of weird psychedelic things happen if you do that.
But a fascinating amphibian fable that turns out to be factual certainly is odd.
You're not afraid of a little ghost, are you?
And now this month in history.
In the month of November, on the 19th, in 1493, Christopher Columbus discovered the island of Puerto Rico. Columbus was on his second voyage to the New World and arrived on the island with approximately 1,300 men and 17 ships. He named the island San Juan Bautista to honor St. John the Baptist. The explorer encountered the indigenous Taino people who called their island Boronquen and themselves Boricua, which of course automatically means that Christopher Columbus didn't actually discover it. There were people already there. In the beginning, the Taino people were friendly with Columbus and his men, sharing gifts and food and showing the explorers how they lived. Unfortunately, Columbus and his men soured the relationship with the island people by forcing them into labor and slavery. As interrelations continued to decline, smallpox took hold of the natives, wiping out a majority of their people. The first European settlement on the island was established by Juan Ponce de Leon in 1508. The settlement was called Capara. By 1521, the island was renamed Puerto Rico, which means rich port, and that port city became San Juan.
We originally featured the Island Hotel and Restaurant in Cedar Key, Florida, back on episode 36 in 2015. In November 2024, we stayed overnight and did a little investigating. And while our experiences were subtle, it does seem that paranormal activity does occur here. The building was originally built in 1859 and used as a general store, and it was built to last. The building material that was used was tabby, which is a mixture of oyster shells, sand, and limestone, and the structure has lasted 165 years. The most recent hurricanes to hit the area, particularly Hurricane Helene, only caused slight wind damage to the structure. The building has passed through the hands of many owners, some of whom may still remain in the afterlife. People claim that there are as many as 13 ghosts here. The rest of Cedar Key did not fare well during Hurricane Helene, but we still enjoyed the surroundings of what seems to be a very haunted island. Join us for the history and hauntings of the Island Hotel and Cedar Key.
Cedar Key is located just south of the mouth of the Suwannee River. I love saying that name because, like,
I know you do.
Suwannee River. This is actually a group of barrier islands, despite being referred to as just Cedar Key. So it's actually the Cedar Keys. The islands derive their name from the eastern red cedar that once grew abundantly in the area. It is believed that archaic indigenous people were here, followed by the woodland Indians. These groups left behind shell mounds that can still be visited at Shell Mound Historic Site. When the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, the Timucua tribe were here, and they were decimated by the Spanish. The Cedar Keys would go on to be used by several groups, including the Seminoles and pirates. The United States Army established itself on Cedar Key in 1839 by building a fort there, where a garrison was headed by General Zachary Taylor, who would eventually go on to be a president. A hurricane in 1842 chased the army away. That same year, Congress passed a law called the Armed Occupation Act. The bill was a blatant attempt to run the Seminole off and bring more white people to Florida.
It would be the Florida Railroad that would bring big changes to Florida, and in particular, Cedar Key. The president of the Florida Railroad was also a United States Senator, David Levy Yulee. Yulee was a Jewish Moroccan, making him the first ever Jewish senator. Because he was the president of the Florida Railroad, he was nicknamed the Father of Florida Railroads. Yulee had bought Way Island, which was part of the Cedar Key group, to have a place for the railroad's terminal facilities. Cedar Key would become the railroad's western end of the line. The first train arrived in 1861.
Because the railroad meant prosperity, several people took interest in establishing homes and businesses there. Major John Parsons bought some land and began construction on the building that would one day become the Island Hotel. The structure was built from tabby, as we said, and massive 12-inch oak beams secure the frame of the structure in the basement. Parsons partnered with a man named Francis E. Hale, and when the building was finished, they named it Parsons and Hale's General Store. Unfortunately, just as the general store was ready for opening and business seemed ready to grow in Cedar Key, the Civil War started. It brought a halt to all growth, and it brought war to Cedar Key. Union troops invaded the area, and they burned nearly every building. The general store was left alone because the Union saw it as a strategic point for a headquarters. Cedar Key was near a major port, and the general store provided shelter, supplies, and storage. Not to mention, it would have been hard to bring down because these hurricanes haven't even, to think that it only got wind damage and we saw whole buildings taken out when we were there.
Exactly. Major Parsons joined the war effort, and he served as a commander of some Confederate volunteers. He and his men defended the Gulf Coast, and soon the Confederates were able to take back Cedar Key, and then they used the general store as a barracks. The war ended, and Parsons returned to Cedar Key, where he and Hale reopened the general store. Parsons and Hale ran shipping from the general store and supplied the area with everything from furniture to oil to hardware to food to building supplies. The Cedar Key post office and customs house was also inside the general store. At some point, Parsons and Hale decided to offer boarding at their place, and John Muir is one of the people who may have stayed there. Muir is considered the father of America's national park system. Cedar Key was the finish to his 1,000-mile walk, which he had started in Indiana, and this walk was his attempt to study and enjoy the natural landscape. He wrote of this adventure in his book, A 1,000-Mile Walk to the Gulf, and in it he recounts stepping into a little general store in Cedar Key. President Grover Cleveland is also rumored to have stayed at the Parsons and Hale General Store on a return trip from Cuba. Times were very good, but they would not last.
Parsons died in 1888 at the age of 71. Florida is known for hurricanes, and a big one hit Cedar Key in 1896. Most of the town was destroyed, and despite the fact that the general store was built from almost indestructible tabby, it did suffer damage. A fire roared through the town a few years later, and then the business collapsed. Cedar Key had hit rough times. Francis Hale died in 1910, and the property went to Langdon Parsons, Major Parsons' nephew. He decided to sell the building in 1915 to a man named Simon Feinberg. Feinberg had no use for the general store, and he turned the building into a full-fledged hotel he named Bay Hotel. Feinberg added a second-floor balcony and reconstructed much of the inside. Marcus Markham managed the operation with his wife, and we enjoyed that second-floor balcony while we were there.
Yes, we did. It's a beautiful view. On May 11th, 1919, Feinberg died in the hotel under very mysterious circumstances. Feinberg was a religious man, and he supported the efforts of the Temperance Society, a group heading up the effort to bring prohibition. Prohibition had not been made law yet, but President Woodrow Wilson had already called for a temporary wartime prohibition in 1917. Feinberg had gone to the Bay Hotel to collect money from the manager and was dismayed to find out that the manager had been running a whiskey still in the attic.
Oh, no!
Scandalous. There was a false roof about 12 inches below the real roof, and this concealed the copper pipes used for the still. The manager wanted to placate Feinberg, so he treated him to a wonderful meal, and then Feinberg retired to the hotel and went to sleep. He never woke up.
I'm sure it's just a coincidence that he
Dun,
had
dun,
a nice
dun.
meal there and then died. You don't think he was poisoned, do you? Was it murder?
Murder.
Obviously, that's what we think. The hotel would filter through the hands of several owners after the death of Feinberg. The building became known as the Cedar Key Hotel and then later was renamed Fowler's Wood after a new owner. That's such a horrible name. Fowler's Wood. Why would you call a hotel that? It was the hotel's tenure as Fowler's Wood that it would become a brothel and speakeasy during the 1930s. So I guess now we know what he means by wood. Anyway.
Oh, Diane. Probably talking about a duck blind or something.
Maybe. Mr. Crittenden managed the hotel at this time. In 1932, the railroad stopped running to Cedar Key and economic depression hit the area once again. Times were so tough for the hotel that it went into foreclosure. The owner took the foreclosure pretty hard and tried to burn the building down 3 different times. But I don't think Tabby burns really well, so his plan might have worked had he stopped to remember that the fire department was right across the street. The fire was extinguished every time.
And I recall them saying that a lot of their time was spent at the brothel when they weren't working.
Oh, the fire department?
Mm-hmm.
They might have actually been there when he was trying to burn it down.
Probably.
And that fire department is still across the street.
It sure is.
They have some old trucks in there. We were really enjoying looking at them.
Ray Andrews bought the property at the end of the 30s and had his sister and her husband manage the place. It was here that most of the residents of Cedar Key heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor. In 1945, the King Neptune Lounge was added to the hotel. The hotel would experience a renaissance and one of its grandest times when in 1946, Bessie and Loyal Gibby Gibbs purchased the hotel. It was in bad shape, and they renovated it and reopened it as the Island Hotel. The couple added their unique flair to the place, and Gibby kept bar. The townspeople loved to gather at the bar, as did visitors. Some of those visitors included Pearl Buck, Tennessee Ernie Ford, Francis Langford, Richard Boone, and Myrna Loy. In 1948, the couple hired an artist to paint murals in the restaurant and bar, and upstairs. The restaurant had a great reputation as well, and was known as a place to eat the freshest seafood and vegetables around. Bessie created many of the recipes cooked by their chef, Catherine Big Buster Johnson, and she chastised any patrons who did not eat their vegetables. I think that's hilarious.
That is hilarious. I ate all of my asparagus, so she wouldn't have been mad at me.
Good girl. She is credited with creating the signature dish for the restaurant with Big Buster. That dish is heart of palm salad, and the restaurant still serves it. If I had known that, I would have ordered it.
Well, when you read the ingredients here, it'd be fine for you, but there's no way I could eat that because there's a lot of stuff that when you are a kidney stone former, you cannot have.
Right. The recipe includes slivered lettuce, slivered palm hearts, pineapple chunks, chopped dates, chopped crystallized ginger that is covered in palm dressing made from mayonnaise, vanilla ice cream, peanut butter, and green food coloring.
I don't know how they came up with that. I'm like, mayonnaise and ice cream and peanut butter? Okay.
Creamy,
it sounds
creamy.
delicious, though.
I'd go for all of it except for the dates.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of dates, and I'm not a big fan of crystallized ginger either.
Oh,
so
but I love it. It's
I know
so
you
good.
do. I was like, if Kelly would have seen the ingredients, she probably would have gotten that. In 1950, Hurricane Easy hit Cedar Key and ripped the roof off of the island hotel. The upstairs room was water damaged, as well as the King Neptune mural in the bar. The couple added the nearly wraparound veranda on the second level in 1958, and they filled it with rocking chairs. So apparently whatever that second-story balcony was, they improved upon it. Gibby Gibbs died in 1962, and while Bessie had just lost her love and her rock, she forged forward with continuing to run the hotel. Gibby's body was cremated and his ashes spread at channel marker 32. Everyone called Bessie Miss Bessie, and she was beloved on the island. She had a big personality and didn't put up with any nonsense. A drunk who came into the lounge filthy was quickly ushered out by Miss Bessie, and she handed him a bar of soap. Miss Bessie got involved in the community in many areas. She helped establish a museum, she fought to keep the oldest house in Cedar Key from being demolished, and the hotel served as a de facto chamber of commerce for the city of Cedar Key. The city gained not only prominence in Florida, but at a national level as well, so she was really a great marketer too. Bessie served as a city commissioner, judge, fire chief, and mayor. On top of all that, she ran the Island Hotel successfully until 1973.
Arthritis was getting the best of Miss Bessie at that time, and 2 back operations had left her in a wheelchair. She sold the hotel to Charles and Shirley English and bought a little wooden cottage on Highway 24. Bessie would die tragically in a house fire 2 years later, and her remains were cremated and laid at sea with Gibby.
She had called the fire department to tell him that her house was on fire, but they didn't get there in time, and obviously she couldn't get herself out because she couldn't walk.
It's so sad.
She was trapped.
We ended our trip on Cedar Key with a visit to the Cedar Key Cemetery to see Miss Bessie's cenotaph. The Englishes did not last long, and they sold the hotel to Harold Neighbors in 1978. Neighbors remodeled the bar and made that his main focus, letting the restaurant and hotel fall by the wayside. In 1980, he sold the operation to Marcia Rogers, and she refocused efforts on the restaurant once again, hiring Chef Jean McCumbers. The restaurant again became a place known for its food. Singer Jimmy Buffett became a frequent guest at the Island Hotel during the 1980s and gave impromptu performances in the Neptune Bar.
That would be so cool.
I know. The hotel was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1984. Marcia got a little new agey at this time and closed the Neptune Bar to the public and made it into a coffee and juice bar where she hosted things like the Full Moon Wakefulness Retreat. Cedar Key residents burned her in effigy in front of the post office in response. And that's not surprising because the locals loved this lounge. And it was very busy on the Saturday night that we stayed there.
Yeah, we went down to the restaurant to eat, and then we went out a side door to check out the patio, and it was completely packed with people listening to some live music. So this is definitely where the locals like to come. And especially at this time, you can only imagine because so many of them are trying to get their houses fixed and
their businesses.
Yeah.
There's not a lot that's open currently, but it's still worth the trip. Absolutely.
Yeah, it pretty much was the only thing happening in town while we were there, unfortunately. Tom and Allison Sanders bought the place in 1992 and cleaned it from top to bottom and reopened the Neptune Bar after they fully reconstructed it, covering it with a Cedar Key cedar top. The Island Hotel became a social center once again, and the restaurant continued its reputation for good food, still under Chef Jean McCumbers. Don Fisher and Tony Cousins moved to Florida from England, and they purchased the Island Hotel in 1996. The couple would focus on refurbishing the hotel and added private bathrooms to every room. Central heat and air was also added, bringing the hotel more up to date and making it very, very cold. The air conditioning was very high the whole time we were there. Televisions and phones were still kept out of the rooms to retain the hotel's charm, and that continues today. While redecorating the dining room, the couple hired a colorist to help them decide which colors to use. They chose a lilac and plum with a pine ceiling. Dawn got the shock of her life when Bessie Gibbs' nephew came to visit and showed her a bunch of old photos. One of the photos was in color and featured the dining room. The colors that Bessie had chosen to paint the dining room were the same ones that the dining room was repainted by Dawn.
That's amazing.
And I have no doubt, based on some of our experiences, that maybe she was influenced by Bessie.
Yep. Dawn and Tony got married and had a child and realized that the hotel was too much for them, so they sold it in 2001 to Bill and Mary Lou Stewart. The Stewarts had been born in Florida, but they had both ended up in Texas. They retired and decided to return to Florida. Things at the hotel seemed fine at first, but in 2002, the couple abruptly fired the entire staff, boarded up the place, and ran back to Texas. The cousins took back ownership and reopened the hotel and restaurant. They then sold the place to Andy and Stanley Bear, who still own it today. They refreshed the place and have run it for the past 20 years. Stanley writes of their adventure, "We returned to the States in August 2003 and began a search for that one last quiet, undeveloped spot that might still be found in Florida. We stumbled onto Cedar Key and the Island Hotel. We immediately knew we had found what we were looking for. The wonderfully quaint island and the manner in which they welcomed us has been a bonus beyond our wildest dreams. We are greeted every day by friendly, smiling faces. Our first few weeks were spent giving the hotel a facelift. We painted the downstairs lobby and replaced worn-out furniture throughout the hotel. A new bath-shower combination was added for room 27. The hotel quickly came back to life, and I do believe even the ghosts are smiling. It is as if they spent the day at a beauty parlor. Our staff is excited about the new look, and they have reason to be proud of their hotel again."
We actually met Stanley when we were there. She was at the front desk and checked us in. A woman named Stanley, imagine that. The Island Hotel has 10 rooms and operates as a bed and breakfast, so there's a complimentary breakfast in the morning. Get the French toast, you won't be disappointed.
Well, mine was very good too. I'm just not as much of a French toast person.
I know. I love French toast, and this was probably some of the best French toast I've ever had in my life. All the rooms are decorated differently with antiques, and each has their own private bathroom. Rooms 27 and 28 have the bathroom across the hall from the room, which can be a little inconvenient, but we didn't mind. It also makes them the cheaper rooms. So if you're looking for a little bit of a deal, as long as you don't mind having to go across the hall to go to the bathroom, you're fine. Although there are no televisions or phones in the rooms, there is Wi-Fi. As one can see, the hotel has passed through many hands, but it has never lost its character. Its spirit has continued to thrive, and now some say that spirits from the past remain here at the Island Hotel. 13 spirits to be exact. Let us introduce you to the 13 ghosts. 3 spirits have not been described by anybody, but psychics claim that they are there. Then there are 2 spirits of Native Americans that have been seen in the hotel at various times. A fisherman has made an appearance, and another specter has been described as tall and thin. None of these spirits is very well known, but the rest of the 13 are seen more often and have made themselves known.
And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors.
One of these is a young black boy. When the Island Hotel was Parsons and Hale's general store, this young man of 9 was given the job of stock boy. He would stock shelves and keep the store clean. One day, something went missing in the store, and the manager accused him of stealing. Whether the boy actually stole anything is not known, but he was scared and ran away and hid. The location he chose to hide in was a bad one. It was a 5-foot-deep, 2,500-gallon cement cistern in the basement of the store, and he drowned. No one knew what happened to him until his skeleton was discovered in the cistern a year later. The young boy's ghost continues to haunt the basement. Although I think I had him interacting with me on my dowsing rods when we were in our room on the 2nd floor.
Yeah, so, we're like, why does they always seem to indicate that ghosts have to stay in one location? So I think they can move around, and you thought you were talking to him, and you had even asked him, or I think you said something to the effect of, you didn't steal anything, did you? And he told you, nope, I didn't.
Right, yeah. And I wasn't expecting his spirit to be the one that came through because of what I had heard about where he stayed, but sometimes you get answers on the dowsing rods that you don't expect. That's why I think it's not necessarily our mind controlling them.
Yeah, that's what you tell me all the time, because you're like, I'll think, oh, the spirit's going to say yes, and then it says no. And you're like, I don't think I am controlling what it's saying.
Yeah, you can try to clear your mind as much as you want, but there's always going to be that little bit of human interference, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get different answers than I expect all the time. You can actually say it right into that recorder, and we'll be able to hear you later. We would appreciate it. You don't have to, but we certainly would appreciate it. Do we have a little girl with us? No. Okay. Do we have a little boy with us? Remember, you cross him for yes, you push him away for no. Is there a little boy with us?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you point them straight away, please?
So we're wondering how old you are.
Are you younger than 5? Remember, you push them away for no, cross them for yes. So it looks like you're going with no. Okay. Are you between the ages of 5 and 10? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I was literally just saying, you think we could go down into the basement?
Well, maybe we don't have to go down to the basement.
Can you point those straight ahead, please?
There you go.
That was quick, thank you. So, did you used to work in the general store? When it was a general store, doing little chores and stuff, sweeping up, cleaning up? That's okay. Thank you very much.
That's a yes.
Yep, that's a yes. Well, you know what? I'll tell you something right now. I don't believe for a second that you stole anything. I just think that that was a misunderstanding. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry that that happened to you.
There's another female spirit that is described as a small-waisted woman wearing a long black dress with a modest black hat. She's been seen in the downstairs by staff and guests for decades. The spirit is usually holding a pitcher of water. She is thought to have been a woman who ate at the restaurant and then died on her way home when her carriage overturned. I have no idea why she would be coming back here and why she'd be holding a pitcher of water, but maybe she
was
help.
wait staff or something.
This spirit and the little black boy are thought to cause puddles in the hotel. One of these puddles kept appearing under a bed. Sometimes water would be dripping down from the bed frame, but the bed and bedding were dry. On another occasion, a mother came to the hotel so her daughter could write a paper on the ghosts of the hotel. This mother was amused by the whole idea of ghosts. Oh my, yes, ghosts, we're so afraid of them. Until a staff member took them to the puddle room and a puddle of water formed at the mother's feet.
Oh my goodness.
When the staff member pointed this out, the mother screamed, grabbed her daughter, and they ran from the hotel.
Oh, good grief.
You won't be laughing at ghosts ever again, will you?
The most seen ghost at the hotel is that of a Confederate soldier who apparently died on the property for unknown reasons. Had he been wounded, or did something sinister take place? His ghost seems to like to take early morning walks and is often seen in the early morning mist that blankets the coastal location. He is seen standing at attention near the doors leading to the stairs also. Some have wondered if the apparition is that of Major Parsons, who had led a Confederate garrison.
Makes sense because he owned the place, so why wouldn't he be there in spirit form?
True.
As we talked about earlier, Simon Feinberg had died at the hotel under mysterious circumstances. And, had his meal been too rich and caused him to have a heart attack, or was someone trying to protect their whiskey still and made sure he would not interfere with operations by killing him? Was he poisoned? Feinberg seems to be at unrest, which would indicate to me that he didn't just die of natural causes. Hotel guests have seen him walking the halls and have heard disembodied footsteps. Feinberg is called the Wandering Ghost for this reason. He's been seen in room 27, which is the room where he died. He also seems to like the kitchen pantry. So we were in his room, but I don't know that we had any interactions with him.
Room 27 seems to be the most active area of the hotel, which is why we booked that one. Besides being haunted by former owner Feinberg, a prostitute from the brothel hangs out in this room and the adjacent room 28. She had worked here during the Depression, and it is believed that she was murdered. Male guests have had the most experiences with her. They not only see her, but they feel their bed being sat upon, and occasionally a patron receives a disembodied kiss. When lights are turned on, she vanishes. This painted lady appears wearing white and also likes the waitress station in the early evening. 2 female guests found a tiny indentation on their bed as though someone was sitting on it when they returned to their room after having a hot toddy in the Neptune lounge. Did they actually see it, or were they drunk?
Yeah, how many hot toddies did you have? And Kelly, we ran into the same thing at this restaurant that we've run into at other haunted restaurants and such.
Oh, good grief, yeah.
We get the new waitress who's like, oh no, I'm new here and haven't had any experiences, but now I'm going to be a little bit worried. I'm like, why in the world, every time we go to a place that's specifically haunted and then we ask the wait staff about it, it's like the person's new.
Especially when their hauntings are widely published.
Yeah, exactly. The manager, who some think poisoned Simon Feinberg, was Marcus Markham. He was drinking one night in the King Neptune Lounge when he got in a fight with a steamboat captain. The argument got very heated and a knife was pulled. When the fight was over, Markham had been stabbed to death. His spirit seems to have taken up residence in the bar. His apparition is most often seen behind the bar near the pantry. Bullet slugs have also been found in the wall behind the King Neptune painting. Were these just from some idiot shooting at the painting, or did something else take place here in the bar? Hopefully Markham and Feinberg stay away from each other in the afterlife. Can you imagine them both haunting this place?
Interesting, though. There's a photo of Markham right up on that cabinet outside of room 27. So why would they put his photo right there if that was Feinberg's room?
I didn't realize that's who was in that picture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's almost like you're trying to bait him or something. Let's get these two fighting each other.
The dominant ghost at the Island Hotel is Bessie Gibbs, whose tenure at the hotel is the most memorable. It's not surprising that she would be here since she loved it, and she still enjoys taking care of the place. People claim to see her attempting to make beds and cleaning and rearranging furniture. Miss Bessie is a prankster who enjoys locking guests out of their rooms and occasionally comes walking through the rooms in the middle of the night, only to disappear through another wall. Owners have been locked out of the hotel several times, with not only the front door being locked, but the kitchen screen door is locked from the inside. She drops pictures off the wall, unplugs lamps, and makes loud noises. The swing on the second floor is her favorite spot, as she sat there often during her tenure. We definitely interacted with her, and we'll share more about that in a moment.
One guest reported the following story. After being out many hours later, my husband wanted to go to sleep while I still wanted to hang out in the famous lounge. I told him to keep the lights on, and I was taking the flashlight, having heard that the main ghost had a sense of humor about flipping on and off lights.
Going prepared.
The lights were still on, though, when I went upstairs. I still felt strangely calm, and I'm rather intuitive and sensitive, so if I hadn't been feeling peaceful, I would not have even fallen asleep. After several hours of good sleep, I immediately was awakened by a loud bang. It sounded like a book had been slammed to the floor. That was all I heard. I waited a while longer and then woke my husband up and asked him to check to see if the Bible that was right next to the bed was still there. He said it was. He got up and turned the nightlights on, and we both discovered that a Kleenex box that was on a coffee table across the room had been thrown down across the floor. Just to rule out any possibility of a breeze doing this, we did all sorts of tests, placing the box under a fan and everything, but knew it had to have been thrown. And by something unseen, clearly. Now, I have some friends that run a ghost hunting group called, or they did, I don't know if they've been doing it more recently, but it was called Peace River Ghost Trackers. We've mentioned them on a few episodes. They've investigated the building, and these were their experiences while they were there. We entered the basement at 4:30 p.m., and we were also accompanied by Derek from Channel 20 News out of Gainesville. Basement had a lot of dust, so any pictures from down there are hard to prove. Scott did have a heavy feeling at one point near the cistern where a 9-year-old boy had drowned in the 1860s. Scott had to remove himself for a moment from that area. Sprout, who is his wife, also felt the heavy feeling in her chest and also chose to leave. I'm like, oh, I wish we could have gone down in the basement.
Well, initially, that's what I mentioned to you because I wanted to go down and investigate regarding the little boy.
Mm-hmm.
But then I ended up getting the interactions I did
Upstairs.
in our room.
Yeah.
So
Sprout was entering the room behind the bar at around 1:30 a.m., which was where a man had died of a knife stabbing. While entering, I had a very cold breeze sweep over the top of my left hand and could find no explanation for it. At 2:15 a.m., Tony, Sprout, Janice, and Scott were in the kitchen using dowsing rods to communicate with a man who is connected with the pantry. Many staff have seen and felt his presence for many years. We were standing in the order stated above when the activity occurred. Janice was facing the pantry and using the dowsing rods. She asked where the spirit was, and the one rod swung around and pointed behind her. When Janice asked for the spirit to move in front of her, Tony said, "Here it comes." Tony said she saw a dark shadow of a figure of a man coming towards her, then making a sharp turn in front of all of us. At a time, we all said, "Oh," as the coldness swept past us. I saw Janice shaking from the cold, and Scott said it went down his arm. How cool is that? They actually see a shadow figure and then feel this cold, almost like breeze coming towards them. We had laid down for bed at 4:30 a.m., and shortly after I, Sprout, heard what I thought to be a piano down in the lobby, and that piano is still there. It was about 7 or 8 hits on the high notes of the keyboard, then Lori started to talk. Her first time in a haunted hotel, she was a bit nervous. Then I heard it again about 4 hits this time. That's when I asked Scott if we would be able to hear the piano in our room. He said he hoped so because he had just heard it. Didn't get up because we were pooped and had had enough for the night. I can say I believe we were the last to go to our rooms for bed and didn't hear anyone else up and moving about the hall. In the morning, we were getting the 2 sets of keys together for checkout, but could only find 1 set. The key was finally found in the Velcro-sealed left pocket of a pair of shorts in a suitcase. They were Scott's shorts, and he does not use the left pocket. They were also folded up and unworn shorts. So there's no way he would have been wearing them and put the key in there and forgot. Lori watched her video from the night before and saw Scott take the key out of the door. He put almost everything on the dresser, so it was assumed that is where he set the key. There were several incidents of room doors being unlocked by themselves, told to us by other investigators. Sprout even witnessed room 23's door unlocked twice by itself. The occupants of the room were inside during the first time and were sitting on the opposite side of the room when the door unlocked. They clearly had some interesting experiences.
The television show Haunted Inns and Mansions featured the Island Hotel in 1999. Deborah Lyon Dye wrote Cedar Key Spirit Tour, A Walk Through History, in 2016, and she shares 2 of her experiences in it.
The first was fairly tame. One evening, we found ourselves to be the last patrons in the hotel bar, and Molly asked if we would walk out the back way with her after she closed up. The hotel was empty. We said sure, and after about 15 minutes, she said she was ready and walked to the front door and locked it. On her way back to us, the lights went on and off. She mumbled, "Oh no, not this again." We started to head to the back of the kitchen to leave when the front door blew open. She went back and locked it and shook it to make sure it was tight. On her way back to us, the lights went on and off and on again. We quickly made our way out with Molly, and I do mean quickly. That's when you and I are whipping out the equipment.
Exactly.
As I said, I love the hotel. I think it's the heart and soul of Cedar Key, so my husband and I were saddened when it closed down in 2001. A couple from Texas who owned it briefly left suddenly one night, owing money to many. So now we know why they ran for it.
Bailed, yeah.
At that time, we lived downtown, worked until dark, and loved to take an evening walk. One foggy night, we walked down 2nd Street, everything closed and quiet. When we got to the hotel, we noticed lit, multicolored Christmas lights on the balcony and a few lights inside. The front door was locked, but we were elated that the hotel appeared to be reopening. Once home, we ran into our neighbor, a realtor, and mentioned what we had seen and asked him if he knew anything about the hotel's reopening. He looked at us and laughed and accused us of being in the wine. We assured him that we usually had a glass after our walk, but that we had had none that day. He looked at us, and we again queried him on what he knew. He said, "Danny and Debbie, there are so many bills due on that building that it is locked up tight, and even all the utilities have been shut off. It has to go to court." We silently walked away. We knew what we had seen and went home deep in thought. The building continued to be locked and dark for months, finally going back to the previous owners who had held the mortgage. My husband does not believe in ghosts, but admits, "It's hard to explain that one. I like to think it was a signal to us from Bessie that all will be well again. Or perhaps she was just having another one of her famous private parties."
Too funny.
I was like, how cool is that to actually see all those lights and everything?
Our investigation of the hotel gave us subtle results.
Yeah, because you and I are like wanting to go in and have all this stuff happen. And we didn't have anything, what I would call, we didn't get a whole lot of physical scientific evidence. Let me put it that way.
Very well put. We first conducted an EVP session, and we think we caught something.
I'm going to go ahead and play that right here. So could I get you to tell us what your name is again?
Please.
Please. And are there more than just one spirit here with us? If there is, we'd love to hear all of your names. Again, I'm Diane.
And I'm Kelly.
And I'll play it again. So could I get you to tell us what your name is again?
Please.
Please. And are there more than just one spirit here with us? If there is, we'd love to hear all of your names. Again, I'm Diane.
And I'm Kelly. Sounds like yeah or yep, perhaps to the question of whether there were multiple spirits with us.
Then I tried a couple of Estes sessions, and for the first time ever, absolutely nothing was coming through the AM band.
Right.
I've never had it where it was just static. There wasn't one blip. There wasn't a little bit of music. There was nothing.
I mean, I have to imagine it's just because there's not a lot of AM available in that area, especially after the storm.
Yeah, that's all that Kelly could come up with. She was like, I'm thinking it's just because, there was a storm out here and there's not a lot to come through. She said, why don't you try using the FM band, which I did. And of course, there was a ton of stuff coming through there. But I don't trust the FM band because there's so much content on it. And to me, it just sounded like I was getting the blips that were coming through from actual stations. And I kept increasing it. The S box can go all the way up to 5. Most spirit boxes only go up to 3. And so it was going, so maybe it was real responses, but I have such a hard time trusting an FM band.
Our most prominent experience involved glasses. Diane was positive that she had put her reading glasses in her fanny pack before we headed down to dinner, but when she went to pull them out to read the menu, they weren't in her pack. When we returned to the room, she expected to see them on the bed or side table where she had accidentally left them. Not there. We searched the room and she concluded that she had lost them somewhere. We turned our backs from the couch to look some more, and then I said, "Hey, there they are."
And I was like, what?
Front and center, in the middle of the couch. No way we would have missed them, especially because Diane's laptop was sitting there open, and she had already looked behind it.
Yeah, so of course, Kelly, I am still very skeptical no matter how many crazy experiences we've had since we were getting nothing of real evidence here that I thought. I was like, well, maybe we just missed seeing them, because sometimes you overlook things, even though I had them in a black case and this was a light colored couch. So it would have been really hard to miss them. And they were literally right in the middle of the couch. So you wouldn't want to put them there because they might get sat upon.
Yeah, actually towards the edge and right next to the spirit box and your laptop. So there's no way that we missed it.
Yeah. I will say about a minute or two into us searching, it was almost like my subconscious was trying to tell me something because I did think in my brain, I remember Kelly was reading some stories about Bessie and that she could be a prankster. You don't think she might have moved the glasses or something?
Things that make you go,
Well, we're getting ready to read some experiences that our listener Joanne had there, and this completely convinced me that Miss Bessie was playing around. It was such a weird experience because it was kind of like when we went to the Exchange Hotel. We were getting nothing. You weren't even hardly getting the dowsing rods to do anything at the Exchange Hotel. At least here you were getting responses with the dowsing rods. So I was kind of like frustrated because I'm like, God, this is supposed to be such a haunted place and we're literally getting nothing. I mean, the EMF's not going off.
It went off a little bit. It went to yellow.
Yeah.
Not many times. And not in response.
And really, it only blipped a couple of times, and I don't quite trust that either. And there was one time when I went to the bathroom, and just as I was walking in the door, the flashlight did turn itself on.
Oh, yeah, it did.
But again, then I was like, did it turn on because I caused the floor to vibrate?
Yeah, we turned it off and back on, and we jumped around it and everything, and it didn't come on, but...
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that we had happening, I just was like, nope. And I was even being very vocal about it.
Negative Nelly.
Which is why I think it was my glasses that went missing.
Sure. They're like, really? You don't believe what's going on?
Yeah, I think Bessie's like,
anybody's here?
I'm going to give you something.
I'm going to show you today.
Yeah. I may not turn your EMF on or your flashlight on when you ask me, but I'm going to show you something. It was just so weird to me because I was positive because I don't usually put my eyeglasses in a case, but I was doing it because I was carrying them in my fanny pack. So I put them in their case specifically. And there's no way I would have just put them in their case and then set them down somewhere. I would have put it right into my fanny pack because we were getting ready to go down to dinner. And when I got down there, I was literally shocked when I opened it up and I'm like, how come only my sunglasses are in? I know I didn't put my sunglasses in here instead of my eyeglasses. No, definitely. So that made my brain go, I always ask these questions. How are they picking stuff up and moving them? And not only were these picked up, but if I put them in my fanny pack and close the zipper, at what point was that zipper opened? The glasses taken out because I had it on my body. And then where did the glasses go? Because they weren't anywhere. It wasn't like we came up to the room and then saw them sitting on the couch because then we wouldn't have thought it was anything paranormal. So,
no, I mean, we looked specifically on the couch, moving things on the couch, and they were just sitting there right at the very edge in the front of the couch.
And so we're talking about a spirit that not only has some kind of physicality that we can't see or feel, that wasn't indicating on any equipment, but had the physicality to take an object and perhaps take it to another dimension. Didn't seem to me like they were in the room unless they were under the bed, because that's the only place I hadn't looked yet.
Right.
And then was able to manifest them, to make them reappear somewhere where we had already looked. So now we're talking about an intelligent spirit that let us look all over and then went, oh, here they are, so that we would know beyond a shadow of a doubt. Those were not there before. Now they are. Even though I kept telling you, I wish we had a camera that we could rewind and see that we actually had looked there. But I'm like, for both of us to miss that, like, a snake biting you, I don't think we both would miss it, especially right there on the couch. But then, like we said, we got these experiences that Joanne shared, and I'm going to go ahead and read those right now. And you will then find out why I went, oh, this was something that happens here.
And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors.
Joanne starts off, okay, you asked for it, get a drink.
I think she actually said get a pot of coffee.
Well, she said that in the Spooktacular Cruise. She wrote get a drink here.
Gotcha.
In July 2016, I read a visitor's comment that the entire island is haunted. I immediately made reservations at the Island Hotel for my 18-year-old daughter and myself to spend 4 nights there. The only room with twin beds was number 27, which is now changed. The twin beds are over in number 28.
28, yeah.
This room not only had private access to the largest bathroom with a clawfoot tub, but also was reportedly haunted by a murdered sex worker who liked to kiss sleeping guests on the cheek. Cool. We checked in on a sunny afternoon on July 12th. Since it was in the middle of the week, Tuesday, the second floor of the hotel was empty, with only a few staff downstairs in the lobby. We kind of had the hotel to ourselves, too. I think there were 2 other couples staying there.
Right.
Our small room was sunny and cozy, with large floor-length windows and a rocker in the corner. My daughter and I closed our door, put away our things, and sat on our beds to discuss where to eat lunch. I laid my glasses on a dresser next to my alarm clock. This is important. In the middle of our conversation, we heard our doorknob click. We glanced over to see the knob turn, and our door swung open. Everyone else was still downstairs. I'm sure it was just the wind, right?
I'm sure. And I'm sure that's why they actually have the deadbolts on there now, too.
I know, because they have
hasp.
they have like
a little bit more
all
difficult
kinds
to-
of, yes, there's all kinds of locks on the door now, so they cannot just like open themselves like that. So I don't know if they've befuddled the spirits or what, but since my daughter and I have lived in haunted houses our entire lives, few things scare us. We laughed, asked not to be disturbed, and closed the door. We decided to go to Tony's for some of their world-famous, award-winning clam chowder. It really is the best, plus the restaurant is in a century-old bank building, which we're going to be talking about in just a moment. I walked over to the dresser where I'd put my glasses just before our door opened. My glasses were gone. We searched the room until my stomach reminded me that I didn't need to see to order soup. We closed our door and walked down the street to Tony's. Yum. An hour later, we returned to our room. Yep, there were my glasses, neatly placed beside my purse on a cushioned chair. We hadn't mentioned my missing glasses to anyone. Yes, I audibly said, thank you. I noticed that my digital alarm clock read 7:54. Our phones correctly read 4:54. My clock had never reset itself. I had set it to the correct time the minute I unpacked it. Whatever. While I reset it, my daughter told the ghost that the pranks were funny, but please don't do it again, or we might sleep through our free breakfast. And believe me, the hotel's breakfasts are the best. Cedar Key's motto should be, come for the ghosts, stay for the food, and I agree. To our delight, only one other couple checked in and the staff leaves by 10, so we had the hotel to ourselves. We had brought a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, so we set it up on a big dining table in the middle of the upstairs common room and went to work. We're both spirit sensitive thanks to generations of Scottish second sight, so this was the best way to check out the ghosties, just hang out. Sadly, the night was calm. I figured the ghost had taken our request seriously, so I went to bed around 1, leaving my daughter to work on the puzzle alone. It's addicting. An hour later, my daughter woke me up and asked me to look at a large sofa near our puzzle table. I saw and felt nothing. Gwyneth agreed, but said she'd just seen a dark-haired woman sitting on that sofa, watching her. I was worried this chick had returned for more pranks. Since I did not want my sleep disturbed by this or any other ghost, I prayed for God to send an angel to guard our bedroom door. We never had another thing happen in our bedroom after that. I've yelled at more than one ghost in my life who woke me up. I guess she doesn't like being
I
woken
need
up.
my sleep.
The next night, we and the other couple were still the only guests. The couple was friendly and quiet, so we got along well. My daughter and I were up till 4 a.m. with that puzzle and a few extras. About 3 a.m., from the open stairwell beside us, we heard light footsteps like a woman's walking around the downstairs lobby. The smell of coffee brewing wafted up from the downstairs kitchen. Coffee! Yay! I promptly walked down into the dark first floor. No footsteps and sadness, no coffee. I could still smell it, but the kitchen was clean. I returned to the jigsaw puzzle. A short time later, from the corner of the upstairs common room near the balcony doors, a male ghost watched us. As she worked on the puzzle, my daughter kept glancing over her shoulder. I asked what was wrong. "I see feet," she said. "I know," I replied. "Just ignore them." A few minutes later, my daughter began flicking her hair in an irritated manner. "He's pulling at my hair and bugging me," she complained. I walked over to the ghost. There was a thin, whitish mist, and angrily reprimanded him in a loud whisper, so not to disturb the couple sleeping in their room. "Cut it out. If you can't help with the puzzle, then go away," and returned to my chair at the puzzle table. A few seconds later, I was surrounded by intense cold. Mr. Ghost was pissed and apparently trying to intimidate me. We ignored him. He finally left. On our third night, we and the couple were still the only guests. Since the next day was Friday, we expected our blissful solitude would be broken with weekend tourists, who love to keep drinking long after the downstairs bar is closed. The couple's room was located directly across from our puzzle table. The inn was quiet as we concentrated on that darn jigsaw. We did finish it before we left. I have photos of cheering guests, LOL. Around 1 a.m., the doorknob to their room suddenly began turning back and forth very fast, with sounds of the lock being rattled and the door shook, as if someone was frantically trying to get out. Concerned, we went to the door and listened. The door never stopped rattling even when I touched it. We could hear voices of a man and woman speaking softly from what sounded like was the far side of the room's interior. After a few minutes, all of the commotion stopped abruptly. Everything was quiet. We returned to our puzzle. The next morning, I saw the nice couple at breakfast and asked if they'd heard the ruckus from their noisy door. They looked surprised. They had just returned from visiting a friend overnight in the next town. They'd all gone out drinking, so the couple stayed at their friend's.
Oh, wow.
Their room had been empty. My daughter and I were the only living beings in the hotel that night. I had thought maybe the couple had gotten up and gone to the other side of the room, like what's happening to the door, and then didn't bother to come out.
Yeah.
I told them about our past adventures, including my missing glasses. The woman said that had happened to her. She had laid her reading glasses beside her book on the nightstand and gone to the bathroom. She returned to find her glasses gone. Her husband and she looked everywhere. She finally just went to sleep. The glasses were still missing the next day. 2 mornings later, they awoke to find the glasses laying between them, neatly folded. Additionally, their ceiling fan kept whirling like a helicopter and kept them up all night, even when they turned it off. Later that day, the woman told me that she was taking a shower. The shower curtain around her flew open, and she saw the outline of a man standing in the middle of the small bathroom.
Oh, no.
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 We ain't doing psycho reenactment with me. The couple changed rooms. I have more tales, but those should fill up the podcast, LOL. Wow, talk about some experiences there.
What is it about reading glasses and Miss Bessie?
I don't know. But
That's too funny.
Now we're talking 3 people have had the exact same experience, and you and I had no idea about that. That's why I went, gosh, I really wish we had a camera so we could rewind it and just really make
Right.
sure. It's almost like she knows that if she takes something else, you may not miss it right away, but like reading glasses, you're going to miss because you can't read a thing without them, really.
Exactly.
And even nowadays, I don't know if they understand what a cell phone is and stuff, but most people who need reading glasses, you kind of need the reading glasses to read your cell phone too. So I was like, here we had another place where we weren't having really much happen. And then we had what I think is a very profound experience, but it's something we can't prove. It's another one. Our most profound experiences are personal. No scientific equipment recorded it. We can't prove it to you. It's a story that we can tell you, and you just have to believe us.
It's a head scratcher for sure. And I love it because some of the most profound things do happen to us when you're in that skeptical mindset.
Yep.
It's like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to show you.
And it's always something big.
Yep.
When we were at the Exchange Hotel, I was so upset, especially there because we had driven so far. I mean, Cedar Key, we had driven quite a ways too, but it was just on our way coming home because we'd gone up to Panama City. And so I was like, well, why don't we stop at Cedar Key on the way back? And you do have to pay extra if you only stay one night on the weekends. And we said, oh yeah, that's not a problem. We just really want to stay. And then we were really worried because we had made the reservation before the hurricane had come through. And we're like, oh gosh, I hope we're still going to be able to stay. And everything that we had seen, like the town had just been demolished. So we're like, ay. So when we went, it was kind of disappointing because we didn't get to see Cedar Key in her glory. So we are looking forward to returning after they've rebuilt. There's a lot they're going to have to rebuild. And one of the main things that's down on, I guess they call it Dock Street. This is where all the main stores and
Right.
restaurants and stuff is. 2 of them I think there had been buildings there because there's still like cement
The pylons.
still there, but there was nothing on top of them. And then one half of a whole nother building looks like it just got completely burned out.
Yeah.
And we went, it was about a month and a half after the hurricane, and there was still huge piles of debris that they were loading up. We had pictures that we put up on Facebook and stuff to show people. And I mean, there was like the street, parts of it were just like kind of collapsed down and washed away. Same thing, the sidewalks were pushed up. We went to the Cedar Key Cemetery, and it was really interesting. There was, you could tell that like a large oak tree had probably fallen over.
Well, there was still the stump portion. It's just the bigger portion of the tree itself had been
they had
removed.
sawed all those away and removed it, but you could see that the trunk had literally pulled up somebody's burial, and it had cracked their tombstone, and a tombstone that was on top of it that had been cracked up, and there's a huge gaping hole, which, we had to look down.
Very sad. I'm very much looking forward to getting back there.
Yeah. And we were walking through with just one of those stupid apps that you have on the phone. I wasn't really expecting anything, but it did spit out the word damage, and there was a lot of damage. So we're like, oh, maybe that was coinciding with it. It's a great place, though, and we definitely were not going to cancel because we're like, they probably could use our tourist dollars.
Oh, for sure.
And a couple of the stores were reopening, so we were able to go into one of the stores, and that's where I ended up buying the book that I shared the personal stories from there. And you bought a bracelet.
I did buy a bracelet.
Yeah, it had a lot of cool stuff in it. So definitely recommend hitting up Cedar Key.
There are other haunted locations on Cedar Key. The Historical Society Museum that was the former Lutterloh building is located at 609 2nd Street. This started as John Lutterloh's private residence and eventually was used as an army depot, service station, restaurant, library, and gift shop. The last owner was Gertrude Tees, and she donated the building to the Historical Society in 1978. The building was restored in 2007 and hosts a variety of exhibits on the history of the island. The ghost here is referred to as the chain-smoking ghost.
I wonder why he died.
Smoke is smelled in the building, and upon investigation, nothing is found. Chairs occasionally fall over on their own, and strange noises are heard.
The Hale building, located at the corner of 2nd and D Street, is named for former mayor Francis E. Hale, who built the structure in 1880 to be used as a clothing and grocery store. So he clearly had a couple of stores here because he was the partner in the Parsons and Hale. The structure is 4,000 square feet with 17-inch thick tabby walls, which is probably why it's still standing, 15-foot ceiling, heart of cedar timber framing, and a bricked courtyard in the back. A second-story porch was added at the turn of the century. Several businesses have used the building, including I.O. Andrews & Company, which sold ladies' and gents' furnishing goods. A doctor's office was here, as was a real estate office. There was a bar and a movie house, and Tony's Chowder House, which opened in 2005 and is still there today on the ground floor. Chef Eric's Chowder has won world championships, and the restaurant is named for his brother. And as you heard, Joanne has been there to eat and definitely concurs that chowder is amazing. It was not open when we were there. Otherwise, we might have tried some of that chowder. I love chowder. And these stories from the Hale building are shared also by Deborah Lyon Dye from her Cedar Key Spirit Tour book. One morning, Janice and fellow worker Fritz were readying for lunch when several kitchen utensils flew out of a crock on a shelf near where Janice was standing and sailed across the room some 10 feet towards Fritz. They fell to the floor before hitting her, and Fritz in surprise asked, "Did you throw those at me?" Janice replied, "Don't be silly. Would I throw things at you?" While surprised and puzzled, they both had to return to work. The next day, Janice was at the cooking stove when several of her cooking spoons rose up out of a jar over to where Fritz was standing. Both began to get nervous. Fritz revealed that she did not believe in Cedar Key ghost stories, but that when she and another worker went to relax in the back rose room, something brushed the back of my leg. Janice assured her that there had to be some good explanation. Janice wrote, "Weird things become commonplace, including the feeling that something very cold was directly behind me watching over my shoulder while I worked. Late one night after midnight, Janice's daughter Patty came downstairs visibly upset. 'Mom, I was just stopped in the hall upstairs.' Confused, her mother asked if someone was upstairs. 'No, not someone, something. I was hurrying to get back down here because it's so scary up there late at night. I was rushing down the hall and suddenly I was stopped in my tracks like I'd run into a wall. It lasted only a moment and then I continued. There wasn't anything there at all. Some invisible force wouldn't let me go forward. It was something invisible that wouldn't let me move.' Unexplained things continued and the years went by." Now to one of my favorite stories. As you know, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you do setups the night before, so all is ready in the morning. And the restaurant that was in there at the time was called the Heron. It was no exception. This setup included the placing of fresh pink carnations in tiny bud vases on each table. But apparently the resident ghost had other ideas as the staff would arrive to find the bud vases snipped of each and every flower, only the stem remaining. So it's cutting the buds right off the top.
Oh, that's not nice.
Sometimes the flowers were on the floor, but more often than not, there was no trace of them, so the spirit was taking them. Continuing to take weird things in stride, Janice told her staff to put the flowers in the cooler at night. They were never snipped again. Recently, I asked a former waitress from the restaurant named Mary why the ghost didn't go in the cooler, and she simply replied, "I don't know. I'm not a ghost." According to Janice, more supernatural activities occurred over the years. Vanishing patrons, rearranged place settings, someone walking by the pass-through window, workers who refused to come back, especially one particular air conditioning repairman named Kenny. After Janice sold her restaurant, several different restaurants used the space. In 1997, my daughter waitressed in the building for Peter Stefani. They used a collection of tape music to provide ambiance. Many nights, my daughter came home complaining of a busy night coupled with the music's having a life of its own, startling guests with loud or strange music, only to find the originally selected tape still inside. For a very brief period of time, a friend named Bob decided to do renovations on the restaurant and have a bakery. While working under the sink, he called to his partner to hand him a wrench, which she did. He finished work and looked for his partner. She had returned to their home much earlier and had never handed him the wrench. At least the ghost could be helpful. From 2004 to 2016, Judy Duvall owned the grand building, living upstairs as well as operating an insurance business from the second floor. She leased the downstairs to a restaurant. When I interviewed her in the upstairs apartment, she repeated the same occurrences that several other townspeople have shared. A child's crying on the back stairs, things disappearing one night and reappearing the next, noises when there's no one else in the building, the cold chill of someone standing behind her. But she added quite a few of her own. The curtain over the window above the back stairs that fell so many times she gave up and left it down. Mirrors that come crashing down into pieces. A roll of toilet paper winding from the bathroom, down the hall, around a corner, into the living room.
Oh my.
But she too says she has never felt afraid. She does, however, hang tight to the railing as she once felt a presence on the stairs, not holding her back, but giving her a slight nudge.
Uh-oh.
Perhaps her strangest encounter occurred in 2012 while watching a surveillance video with the owner of the restaurant downstairs. Eric was trying to see who had played a trick on him sometime in the night, putting a pile of long-handled lighters on the floor by the kitchen door. We watched it together. The camera is set off by motion. The kitchen was pitch black and there were no windows. But as we watched, a white ball of light came in through the window, bouncing wildly like a rubber ball. It finally went out the back of the kitchen wall into the back dining room and then outdoors to the courtyard. It then disappeared. Just remembering that raises the hair on my arms. I've also seen lights bouncing late at night, which I guess are orbs, while sitting on the porch out over the street. I like to sit out there alone at night when it's quiet, she repeats, but I've never felt afraid. So some crazy stuff going on in the Hale building for sure, too.
Definitely. Cedar Key has certainly seen its fair share of tragedy and death via storms and such. The spirit of these islands is strong, and some have to wonder if the presence of spirits is also strong. Does the Island Hotel host more than just living guests? Are there spirits here? Particularly Miss Bessie. Are Cedar Key and the Island Hotel haunted?
That is for you to decide. Well, I'd have to say, I think we believe this place is haunted.
I concur.
We didn't run into all 13 ghosts, but we did run into a couple. And they were very interesting experiences. So we highly recommend checking out the Island Hotel. It was a lot of fun. And like we said, Cedar Key seems like a gorgeous place, especially when it's up and running again. Want to ask you guys to check out our website at historygoesbump.com. And if you'd like to send us some feedback, you can do that at historygoesbump@gmail.com. Want to thank Gabrielle for her email that she sent. She said she'd really enjoyed the Phantasmal Crime episode that we did on the murder of Captain White. And we got to meet up with her when we went to Salem. And we did the ghost tour with her and her daughter. That was a lot of fun. She said, this October, I had the pleasure of working part-time at the historic Charter Street Cemetery in Salem, which we got to see, of course, on the ghost tour. It's the main cemetery right there, so that's really neat. In any case, the cemetery is the oldest burial ground in Salem, where loads of Salem's who's who have been laid to rest, including 2 hanging judges and family members of Salem's accused witches. Working as a cemetery hostess and guide was a dream come true. Sharing the history of Salem with folks from all around the world was incredible. I also had the very unique opportunity to encounter many people who felt compelled to visit because a spirit was beckoning them to visit. Fascinating. That's so cool. And she said, "Are you ever going to be back to Salem?" And I was like, "Not maybe next year, but we definitely want to get back up there so we can spend more time."
Yeah, at some point for sure. And I'd even like to retour the USS Salem again. Maybe have breakfast at McKay's.
Yeah, and do a little bit more specific investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This episode isn't brought to you by our executive producers.
Want to keep the spooks away? Give us a review.
Test, 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 test.
Nope.
Because you were screaming.
No.
Yeah, your microphone's working.
It's hot. It's hot. It's hot. It's hot.
The first European settlement on the island was established by San?
That's San?
Yeah. I don't know how I got...
San Juan.
I don't know how I got San out of Juan. Ghost Tours for the Theater of the Mind. I'm your host, Diane.
And
choke it out, Kelly. Come on. God. You can say your name. Don't be so shy. We all love to hear you say your name.